Tide Hollow Sculler. This is a card I'm really excited to see played in Standard. So, Tide Hollow Sculler is one of those cards that's always been really good, but hasn't really gotten its chance to shine. When Shards was first released, I was putting Tide Hollow Sculler in almost every deck I was making. It had a lot of success in a black-white tokens deck that Luis Scott Vargas made the finals of Pro Tour Kyoto with in 2009, and since then it hasn't really seen as much play because Jund has been around. And Jund just has all of these removal spells. You know, they have their own Maelstrom Pulses, they have Bolts, they have Terminates, they have Bit Blast, and they just have so much removal that the Tide Hollow Sculler can't really reliably take that key card. The other reason Tide Hollow Sculler hasn't been very good is because not many decks as of late have necessarily relied on a single card. We've been looking at a lot of decks lately that have had about 30 creatures, you know, maybe 22 creatures. These decks that just present threat after threat after threat that don't have a key card for you to take out with the Sculler. And that's not really true anymore. Decks like Pyromancer's Ascension, decks like the Green Ramp decks, decks like the Valakut decks, all of those decks are really hinging on one of those cards in their hand. Like, a lot of the time a mulligan decision for them is really reliant on a single card in their hand. And having the ability to Tide Hollow Sculler and take that away is just so powerful. It's also important to note that you can Tide Hollow Sculler away their removal and play an Nixilis, and it's not likely that anybody's going to beat you after you do that. So, you know, Tide Hollow Sculler fits this deck beautifully. I'm really excited to see that he included that here. The Knight of the Reliquaries are an obvious 4-of. I think this is the best creature in Standard. I think it has been for a very long time. I think it's only gotten better now with all the ramp decks running around because it can go and get Tectonic Edge. It can really disrupt opponents, take their Valakuts away from them, you know, take their Eldrazi temples away from them, keep them off those big Eldrazi spells, keep them off of their Primeval Titan. The other thing that Knight of the Reliquary can do that's really exciting is it can go and get a Sajiri Step. Now, for those of you that haven't seen this yet, this is one of the most exciting plays you can make with Knight of the Reliquary. You can tap Knight of the Reliquary and sacrifice a Forest or a Plains, and you can search your library for a Sajiri Step and put it into play. This can be used to counter your opponent's removal spells. This can be used to make one of your guys unblockable. That's especially exciting when you have an Nixilis in play. So that's one of the more powerful things you can do with Knight of the Reliquary. It's really quite good. One of the things I'm not crazy about this deck is that it's playing 4 Birds of Paradise and it only has 9 turn 1 greed sources. I'd like more, but I can understand why L1X1 chose to only play 9. The mana base really gets hairy if you try to go to less than that, unless you want to start cutting things like Tectonic Edge, and I really don't think you can do that. You really want that type of disruption in a deck like this. It's also fine to play Birds on turn 2 in a deck like this. You know, you have powerful 4-drops. You have things that you can do on turn 2 instead of casting a bird, like cast a Fauna Shaman or a Lotus Cobra. And then the bird can be cast on turn 3 to enable a turn 4 Nixilis plus fetch land play. So casting the bird on turn 1 is nice, and you know, you'd normally like to see more green sources, but it's not necessary. And this deck builder noticed that it wasn't necessary and built accordingly. So this is, you know, this is one of the more exciting decks we've seen lately. Including Nixilis over Baneslayer is something that's, you know, really cool. The removal package is also quite interesting. The one Journey to Nowhere seems like a little offbeat, but when you play with the deck, it's come up multiple times where that's been the perfect removal spell, and it's nice to have one of it. It's not a card I'd ever want to draw 2 of, but I want one of it often enough where I think it warrants a slot in the deck. Now I'd like to talk about the sideboard a bit. So I told you that he included Nixilis over Baneslayer in the main, but, you know, sometimes people are still playing the old school decks. Sometimes Baneslayer is just better. Against Naya decks, having a Baneslayer Angel is just such a beating. Their real only way to kill a Baneslayer is cutting Sparkmage Collar, and you have Tide Hollow Sculler to disrupt that, you have Maelstrom Pulse to disrupt that, you have Path, Journey, Linvala, Fauna Shaman to go get Linvala. You just have so many ways to prevent them from putting together a Sparkmage Collar that Baneslayer Angel is just this thing that they can never attack into it. Once it starts turning sideways, it's almost an impossible race for them. It's just one of those cards that you're really excited to have in those matchups. I also like to side it in against Jund. The thing is, Jund may have a lot of removal, but you just have so many things that they need to use their removal on. Like, a Jund player is never going to let a Knight of the Reliquary untap. You know, they're never going to let you untap with it in play. your Tidal Sculler is going to take a piece of removal, so they'll at least have to use a piece of removal on it to get that piece back. You have Nixilis taking pieces of their removal, Sun Titans. You just have all of these cards where they absolutely must kill it. Fauna Shaman. You know? Just these things, that one after the other, where the Gen player really needs to be put on his heels, really needs to keep tapping out for removal spells instead of playing threats. They might even need to try to like play the lottery with a Bloodbraid Elf. And because of this, Baneslayer Angel becomes a really good sideboard card against Jund in a deck like this. You play it as your last creature, and more often than not, you've had enough good threats where your opponent will have had to use all of his removal spells by the time you cast the Baneslayer Angel, and there's nothing a Jund player can really do about a resolved Baneslayer Angel. I remember at a PTQ over a year ago when I was playing a deck with the combo of Baneslayer Angel, Glenalandra Archmage, and against Jund decks, I would just assemble those two cards and leave one blue open, and the Jund player could never win. They could not beat a Baneslayer Angel. As long as it stays in play, it's pretty hard for them to deal with, so it's a nice inclusion there. We also have Obstinate Balos. Very good against Jund, very good against red players. Again, the Baneslayer Angel will be coming in against the red players also. Obstinate Balos, obviously a very good anti-Blightning card, but it's also just really good at racing people. The Jund players will surprisingly come out of the gates with these like really good like race scenarios, and they'll just put you on your heels really quickly, where they've been playing this control game the whole time, and then all of a sudden they start attacking you and they're winning the race, and you're put on your heels, and it just completely messes up your game plan. And Obstinate Balos is a really good card at preventing that from happening. They might be siding out their Blightnings against you in order to beat the Obstinate Balos, but I'd kind of like that to happen. You know, I'd much rather have my opponent not have the play of Bloodbraid into Blightning than have them, you know, maybe hit an Obstinate Balos, because I don't always have Obstinate Balos in my hand, and the Jund player always has Blightning, so that's an important little tidbit right there. Duress and Mind Shatter are obviously good against the combo decks. They're good against all the big mana decks. Again, like I said with Tidal Sculler, people nowadays are more often than not relying on these key cards. And if you take that one card away from them, they get into a lot of trouble. So that's a really nice thing to have against those people. So the last card on the sideboard is Doomblade. Doomblade is obviously good against the Naya decks. It's very good against those Johnny Pridemate decks that have been running around. And that basically sums up everything. So I hope you'd enjoyed this discussion of L1X0's Fauna Junk deck, and hopefully I can give you guys more of these in the near future. Be well. Bye-bye. I hope you guys found that helpful. I'm going to be trying to do these every single week, bringing you guys the newest standard archetypes that you haven't seen yet. Tune in. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Reality's Edge.